Sometimes the most terrifying stories aren't about ghosts or monsters. They're about the creatures sleeping at the foot of your bed. These 6 true stories, verified by police reports and witness testimonies, expose a side of pets that no one wants to believe exists. Ready to discover what your pet does when you're not watching? I sometimes wonder if animals can sense the weight of our guilt, the way they watch us, studying our movements with those knowing eyes. After what happened with the Morrison case, I stopped taking clients altogether, retreated to my little farmhouse on the outskirts of town with just my therapy dog, Echo, for company. He was my anchor through it all, my constant. That's what made it so terrifying when he started changing. It began 3 weeks ago. I was reviewing old case files, trying to make peace with the past. Echo was curled up in his usual spot by the fireplace. Then I noticed it. That head tilt slight to the right, exactly like Sophie's dog had done before. My hand started shaking as I watched him. The Morrison case had haunted me for 2 years. Sophie Morrison's German Shepherd Rex had shown such specific behavioral patterns: the aggressive pacing, the fixation on the basement door, the constant head tilting. I dismissed it all as anxiety, told Sophie it was normal. A week later, they found her body in that basement. The killer had been hiding down there for days, watching, waiting. I closed my practice the next day, but now watching Echo mirror those exact same movements, my blood ran cold. He started pacing the kitchen in perfect figures of 8, just like Rex had. My hands clutched the edge of my desk. This couldn't be happening. Echo stopped at the cellar door, tilted his head, stared. My throat went dry. "Echo, come." My voice cracked. He didn't move, just kept staring, tail rigid. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the old house had me sitting bolted upright. Echo stayed by the cellar door, watching, waiting, just like Rex. The next morning I called the police, asked them to check the cellar. They found nothing, told me I was being paranoid. But Echo's behavior didn't change. The pacing got worse, the staring more intense. Then 3 nights ago I heard it, a soft thud from below like something being dragged. Echo's head snapped toward the sound, his hackles raised. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling as I dialed 911. This time they found him. A man living in my walls. He'd been there for weeks, watching me through the gaps, planning. Echo had known all along. The police said I was lucky, that Echo had probably saved my life. But there was something in Detective Marshall's eyes when he interviewed me. A flicker of recognition when I mentioned the Morrison case. He asked me to come to the station the next day, showed me case files I'd never seen before. Other women, other dogs, all showing the same patterns before their owners disappeared. Some bodies were found, others weren't. And Sophie wasn't the first client I'd lost. There had been others, before I started keeping detailed records, before I recognized the signs. The detective spread photos across the table. Women with their dogs, all looking happy, normal. Then he showed me the last photo. My breath caught in my throat. It was me, 10 years ago, with my first therapy dog, Max, the one who disappeared the same night my mentor was found dead in his basement. The night I'd blocked from my memory, until now. The patterns, the head tilting, the pacing, they weren't warnings, they were rehearsals. Each dog trained by the same man, my mentor, the one who'd taught me everything I knew about animal behavior, who'd given me Max and Echo. I drove home in a daze. Echo was waiting by the door, head tilted, watching. His eyes seemed different now, knowing, training. Sometimes I still wake up in cold sweats, remembering how close I came to sharing Sophie's fate. Echo sleeps next to my bed now, still watching, still protecting. But I can't shake this feeling that there's something more to it all. Something I'm missing. The way he tilts his head sometimes, studying me with those knowing eyes. Like he's trying to tell me something about Sophie, about Max, about all of them. And I wonder, do animals really sense our guilt? Or do they carry secrets of their own? Next week, they're exhuming more bodies, following leads I've helped them piece together. Echo watches me pack for the trip to the station, head tilted, always tilted. And I realize I'm not just a witness anymore, I'm part of the pattern. The question is, am I the next victim, or was I always part of the plan? Last night I found an old photo album in the cellar, hidden behind a loose brick. Inside, pictures of my mentor with dozens of dogs, training them, each one tagged with a date and a name. On the last page, a photo of Echo as a puppy, the date, 1 week before my mentor's death, and beneath it, my name, written in his hand, Patient Zero. I still wake up sometimes thinking about that dog, the way he would stare at me through the kennel bars. Those eyes weren't right. I've worked with aggressive dogs for 8 years at the shelter, but this was different. I should have known better. I'm Sarah, and I'm the person they call when no one else can handle a dangerous dog. The other volunteers joke that I have a sixth sense about them, that I can read their minds. Maybe that's why I noticed what Atlas was doing before anyone else did. It started 3 weeks after he arrived, a beautiful German Shepherd with a bite history, brought in as a stray. At first, he was perfect, almost too perfect, the way he would sit quietly in his kennel, watching, always watching. I noticed it during the group play sessions first. Atlas never participated, just observed from the corner, the way he would tilt his head when the other dogs interacted, like he was studying them, taking notes. Then the incident started. Sweet dogs, ones I'd worked with for months, suddenly turning aggressive toward their owners after spending time with Atlas. 3 cases in 2 weeks. I couldn't prove anything. But I saw how he would press against the kennel bars when certain dogs passed. The low rumble in his throat, not quite a growl, more like words. I started documenting everything. The way other dogs' behavior would shift after being near his kennel, the pattern of incidents, all adopters reporting the same thing, their dogs attacking without warning. Always targeting the neck, just like Atlas had done to his previous owner. I tried telling my supervisor, but it sounded crazy. A dog teaching other dogs to attack? She dismissed it as stress-induced behavior. But I knew what I was seeing. The final straw came when I caught Atlas in the act. It was late, past closing. I was doing final rounds when I heard that sound again, that low, rhythmic rumble. I found him pressed against the bars, making direct eye contact with Luna, our gentlest therapy dog. Her body was rigid, eyes glazed, like she was in a trance. When I called her name, she lunged at me, teeth bared. Atlas just watched, and I swear. I saw him smile. I had to act fast. Luna was our star therapy dog, the one who visited children's hospitals and nursing homes, the one who had never shown an ounce of aggression in her life. I managed to get her away from Atlas's kennel, but the damage was done. Something had changed in her eyes. That night, I stayed late, reviewing security footage from the past month. What I saw chilled me to my core. Atlas had been systematically targeting our most successful rehabilitation cases, the ones ready for adoption. He would wait until late evening, when the shelter was quiet. Then that rumble would start. Sometimes for hours, the other dogs would sit, transfixed, like students learning a deadly lesson. I dug deeper into his history. The bite incident that brought him here wasn't random. His previous owner was a professional dog trainer, found with multiple bite wounds, all precisely placed. The police report mentioned something odd. Before they put him in the squad car, Atlas had turned to look at the other dogs in the neighborhood, making that same sound. Within a week, 3 other dogs in that neighborhood had attacked their owners. I made the hardest decision in my career that night, calling in that behavioral specialist, showing her my documentation, the footage, the pattern of attacks, recommending euthanasia for a dog that, on paper, was showing improvement. The specialist saw it too, that calculated intelligence in his eyes, the way he watched us discuss his fate, like he understood every word. They agreed in the end. But Atlas had one final surprise for us. The morning they came for him, every dog in the shelter started making that same rumble, in perfect unison, like a choir singing his last lesson. We had to evacuate the building. When we finally got back in, Atlas was gone. No broken locks, no signs of forced entry, just an empty kennel, and dozens of dogs, all changed somehow. The official report says he was euthanized as planned. That's what my supervisor tells everyone. But I know the truth, sometimes. When I'm alone in the kennels late at night, I hear that rumble. that almost speech, moving from kennel to kennel. And I wonder, did Atlas teach them something that lived on after he disappeared? Because the incidents haven't stopped. They're just subtler now, more coordinated. Last week, I found a note scratched into the concrete behind his old kennel. Not random marks, actual words. "Thank you for the lessons, teacher." And every time I look into a new dog's eyes, I search for that same calculating intelligence, that cold understanding. Sometimes I find it. And now, I think they're watching me, waiting for what? I'm afraid to find out. But I know one thing for certain. Atlas wasn't just teaching them to attack. He was teaching them something far worse. I should have known something was wrong when I saw those perfect circles scratched into the hardwood floor. The client seemed normal enough when she hired me. Polished, put together, exactly what you'd expect from someone living in the Apex Tower penthouse. Her Russian blue cat had won awards. I remember how she emphasized that point, showing me the ribbons, the trophies. A champion show cat named Bella with fur like smoke and eyes like green glass. I didn't think much about how the woman's hand shook when she handed me her spare key, or how she wouldn't meet my eyes when she said she'd be gone for exactly 3 days, or the way her smile seemed practiced, too perfect, like everything else about her. See, I don't leave my apartment much these days. Anxiety and crowds don't mix well. So pet sitting in luxury high-rises became my perfect solution, usually. The blackout hit on the first night. I was settling in, getting ready to feed Bella her evening meal of precisely measured premium cat food. That's when the power went out. All 40 floors plunged into darkness. My phone showed no service. Even the emergency lights failed. The darkness felt heavy, oppressive, like it was hiding something. I used my flashlight to find Bella, and that's when I noticed the scratches. Perfect circles, 3 of them, carved into the floor beneath the client's desk. The drawer above them was partially open. Inside, I found shredded papers methodically torn into precise strips, like someone had used a paper shredder. Except, I could see the claw marks. My flashlight beam caught more destruction, picture frames with faces carefully scratched out, a laptop screen spiderwebbed with deliberate cracks, all centered on the client's face in her desktop photo. The destruction was systematic, precise, almost elegant, just like Bella, who sat in the corner, watching me with those glass green eyes. I noticed something else too, how the cat's shadow seemed wrong somehow. Too sharp, too intentional, like it was casting shapes that meant something. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, but then I found the hollow space behind the bathroom mirror, exposed by more perfect circles scratched into the wall. Inside was a stack of papers, newspaper clippings about missing persons, all women, all looking eerily similar to my client. And at the bottom, a collection of ID cards, different names, different cities, but the same face, my client's face. Each ID had been strategically damaged, claw marks through key details, dates, numbers that might reveal something important. The cat, Bella, followed me from room to room as I discovered more. Her movements were too precise, too calculated, like she was herding me towards something. When she meowed, it sounded almost like words, almost like she was trying to tell me something. The scratches led me everywhere, to hidden compartments, to encrypted files deliberately corrupted by claw marks, to physical evidence systematically destroyed. In the kitchen, I found more circles scratched into the marble countertop. They led to a false bottom in the pantry, where I discovered a burner phone, its screen cracked in the same deliberate pattern I'd seen before. There were text messages still visible, conversations about identities for sale, about women who wanted to disappear. When I found the final hidden panel, I understood. My client wasn't just missing. She had never existed, at least not as one person. The woman who hired me, whoever she really was, had been erasing herself, and her cat, her perfect show cat, was finishing the job. I spent 2 more nights in that penthouse, watching Bella methodically destroy every trace of her owner's multiple identities. I couldn't leave, partly because of the blackout, partly because of my anxiety, but mostly because I knew. Somehow I knew that Bella was protecting me by letting me see, warning me, each night. I'd wake to the sound of scratching, more circles, more destruction, more evidence being systematically erased. And each morning, Bella would be sitting there, those glass green eyes fixed on me, like she was making sure I understood. When the power finally came back on, I left immediately. I never saw my client again. The police investigation found nothing, just an empty apartment with some unexplained scratches. They didn't believe my story. Of course, how could they? A cat deliberately destroying evidence. It sounded crazy even to me. But I knew what I'd seen. The detective assigned to the case disappeared 3 months later. I recognized her name in the newspaper, and when I went to the police station to tell them what I knew, I saw something that made my blood freeze. There, in the station window, was a Russian blue cat, its eyes like green glass, watching me. I turned around and went home. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, but sometimes, late at night, I think about those perfect circles, about identity theft and missing women. I wish I'd never started chasing those likes. That's what got me into this mess. This thing that I can't explain. Even now, my hands shake when I look at my camera roll. I used to be just another pet photographer in Miami, living the dream, making decent money shooting other people's pets for their Instagram accounts. Then I hit it big with this series of synchronized swimming dogs. My following exploded overnight. 200,000 new followers in a week. The pressure to keep delivering started crushing me. I needed something fresh, something unique. That's when I found her at the shelter, this gorgeous silver gray cat with these haunting amber eyes. The shelter worker said she'd been there for months. No one wanted her because she was too skittish. But the moment I saw her through my viewfinder, I knew she was special. The way she moved, the way she posed. Like she understood exactly what I needed. I named her Echo. The first few shoots were magic, pure magic, the kind of content creators dream about. My followers went crazy for her. The engagement was insane, better than anything I'd ever posted before. Each photo seemed to capture something mysterious, something that made people stop scrolling and stare. The comments kept saying the same thing. Those eyes, they're hypnotic. I should have paid more attention to those words. But then, I started noticing things when I edited the photos. Small things at first, shadows that didn't match the lighting, reflections in her eyes that showed empty rooms when I knew I'd been standing right there, a strange blur around her edges that no amount of sharpening could fix. I told myself it was just tricks of the light, digital artifacts, camera glitches. I even bought new equipment, thinking maybe my old camera was failing. But it got worse. In every new photo, Echo's features seemed to shift slightly, her face becoming less and less cat-like. More, something else. The worst part was it only showed up in the photos. In person, she looked perfectly normal. Sweet even, purring on my lap while I tried to edit the increasingly disturbing images. My assistant Jenny quit after our last shoot. She said she couldn't explain it, but something felt wrong every time Echo was in frame. Said she felt dizzy, nauseous, like something was trying to reach through the lens and grab her. I should have listened. Should have taken Echo back to the shelter, but I was obsessed with capturing whatever this was, understanding it. My following had grown to almost 1 million. People were fascinated, even as the photos became more unsettling. They created theories, started seeing patterns I hadn't even noticed. One follower pointed out how the strange shadows always seemed to be reaching toward the nearest person in frame. Another noticed how Echo's eyes reflected things that would happen hours after the photo was taken. Last night, I set up a time-lapse shoot in my studio. Just Echo in front of a plain backdrop, the camera taking one shot every minute for 8 hours. I've been staring at the footage for hours now, in each frame, frame by frame. She changes, transforms into something I won't describe. The final photo, it's not a cat anymore, and it's looking directly into the camera, looking at me, with eyes that know me, dead. Eyes that have been watching me all along. I deleted everything, all the photos, all my social accounts, destroyed every memory card and hard drive. But I can still feel those eyes watching me through every lens, every screen, every reflection. My phone keeps showing me memories from photos I know I deleted, each one worse than the last. Echo is still here in my apartment, curled up on the windowsill like a perfectly normal cat, but I know better now, and I haven't dared pick up my camera since. because I finally understand she wasn't posing for the photos, she was using them, using me to show everyone what she really is. And now I'm trapped, because how do you get rid of something that's already spread across millions of screens, something that lives in the space between pixels? The other night, I saw someone sharing one of Echo's old photos on their story, the same photo I know I deleted, but in this version, the shadow behind her had grown, and it was reaching toward the person sharing it. I tried to warn them, but their account went dark minutes later. I don't sleep much anymore, just watch Echo watching me, waiting to see what she'll do next, wondering how many others are out there now, staring at her photos, being slowly changed by what they see. Sometimes I think I see her features shift, even without the camera, but that's impossible, right? I have to go now. She's staring at my phone as I type this, and her eyes. They don't look like cat eyes anymore. I should have trusted my instincts the moment Charlie started growling at his own reflection. As a professional dog trainer for 15 years, I know better than anyone that dogs can sense things we can't. The day I brought him home from the shelter, I thought he'd help me heal, help me move past everything that happened with David. That's what my therapist suggested anyway. Get a therapy dog, start fresh, build a new life in this quiet little town where nobody knows your story. I remember sitting there in her office, fidgeting with my engagement ring, the one I still hadn't taken off even 3 months after the divorce. Your ex-husband's actions weren't your fault, she kept telling me. You couldn't have known. But that's the thing, I did know. I saw the signs in David's German Shepherd, Kaiser, weeks before it happened. The way Kaiser started pacing at night. How he'd stare intently at nothing. The random aggression toward his own shadow. I dismissed it all, wrote it off as aging dog behavior. Then came that night, the night David... No, I can't think about that right now. I need to focus on Charlie. Sweet, gentle Charlie who's been my anchor these past 6 months. At least, he used to be gentle. It started 3 weeks ago, the pacing at night. Just like Kaiser. Then came the growling at mirrors, the suspicious glances at corners, the way he'd suddenly snap to attention, staring at empty doorways. My hands are shaking as I write this in my journal, because this morning, Charlie did something that made my blood run cold. He stood at the window, hackles raised, and let out that specific, low, warning growl. The exact same one Kaiser would make whenever David was about to. The sound of breaking glass downstairs snaps me to attention. Charlie's already at the bedroom door, his tail straight, his ears forward, that growl again. I hear heavy footsteps on the stairs, deliberate, and blared, a familiar gait that I'd know anywhere. Charlie whines, backing away from the door, just like Kaiser did that night. My phone is in my hand, but my fingers won't move because I know who's coming up those stairs. And Charlie. Sweet Charlie. He tried to warn me, just like Kaiser tried to warn everyone about David. The footsteps stop outside my door. I can see a shadow beneath it. And I realize now maybe that's why David really got rid of Kaiser, not because he was getting aggressive, but because he was trying to protect me, to warn me. The doorknob starts to turn, and Charlie looks at me with those knowing eyes, those same eyes Kaiser had, right before David. The door opens. I'm already moving before I can think, diving for the bathroom. Charlie lunges forward, his teeth bared. I hear the struggle, the shouts, the sickening sound of impact. My hands fumble with the bathroom lock as Charlie's yelp pierces the air. Then silence. Horrible silence. You always were smart. David's voice comes through the door, calm, controlled, just like before. Getting another dog, moving to a new town. But you should have gone further. My phone, I left it on the bed. Stupid, so stupid. I can hear Charlie whimpering softly, still alive, still fighting, just like Kaiser was. I had to put Kaiser down, you know, Bet, David continues, his voice closer now. After what he did, trying to stop me that night. The shelter, they told me he was too dangerous, too protective, just like this one. Another whimper from Charlie. But I knew he was warning you, just like this mutt's been doing. My eyes dart around the bathroom. The window, too small, the cabinet under the sink. Maybe if I'm quiet enough. You can't hide forever, David says, his footsteps circling the bathroom door. We both know how this ends, how it was always gonna end. I hold my breath, slide the cabinet door open, inch inside, close it behind me, just like I did that night. When Kaiser, brave, loyal Kaiser, gave his life to buy me time, to let me call the police, but this time I have no phone, no Kaiser, just Charlie. Sweet Charlie, who's still out there, still fighting. The bathroom door splinters. I hear David's laugh, that same laugh from that night, but then something else barking, not from inside the house, but outside. Loud, multiple dogs and sirens. Police, we have the house surrounded. David's footsteps stop. I hear him curse. More barking, getting closer. The local shelter, where I volunteer, where I train the security dogs. They must have heard Charlie's distress barks, recognized them. The bathroom door bursts open, but it's not David who finds me, it's Officer Chen, the K-9 unit handler I trained last summer. Charlie limps to the cabinet, nose pressed against the door, telling them where I am, just like Kaiser would have done. They tell me later that David ran, that they caught him trying to steal a car 3 blocks away, that Charlie will be okay, just a mild concussion. But I know something they don't, that dogs, they don't just sense things, they protect, they warn. I wish I'd never noticed the pattern. As a veterinary pathologist, you get used to death. It's part of the job. But this was different. I still check the time whenever I hear about a new dog park opening. My hands shake when I think about what I discovered. The first case seemed normal enough. A golden retriever named Cooper. His owner brought him in after finding him unresponsive one morning. Just another sad case. I performed the autopsy like I always do, methodical, professional. The cause of death wasn't immediately obvious, no signs of poison or trauma, but something felt off. 3 days later, another dog, a German Shepherd this time. Same symptoms and same lack of obvious cause. I started making notes, just standard procedure. That's when I noticed it. Both owners mentioned visiting the new dog park on Maple Street. Still, 2 cases don't make a pattern. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then came the 3rd case, a corgi. Sweet little thing. As I reviewed the owner's intake form, my blood ran cold. They'd been to that same park, exactly 24 hours before their dog died. My hands trembled as I checked my records. The timing matched perfectly for all 3 cases. I started asking questions, casual conversations with the owners when they came to collect their reports. Which parks do you usually visit? Notice anything strange that day? They all described the same things, a beautiful new park, clean facilities, friendly staff, but something else too, a strange metallic smell near the water fountains, a weird static feeling in the air. I drove by the park that evening, kept my distance, watched the happy dogs playing, their innocent owners chatting and laughing. My stomach churned as I counted the visitors, imagining what might happen in exactly 24 hours. I reported my findings to the city health department, called the police too, but without proof, without a clear cause of death. What could they do? The park is still open. I've started keeping track of obituaries, both human and animal, looking for connections I might have missed. Sometimes I park across the street, warning people away when I can. Most think I'm crazy, just a paranoid vet who's seen too much death. Maybe they're right, but I know what I saw in those autopsy reports. I know the pattern is real. And I know somewhere in that park, something is waiting, counting down the hours, 24 at a time. Last week, I decided to go deeper. I started tracking the park's construction history, the property records, the company that built it. Everything seemed normal at first, permits in order, standard contractors, but then I found something, the land. It used to be a research facility, some private company doing experiments with electromagnetic fields. They shut down suddenly in the 90s, no explanation, just abandoned everything overnight. The building records show they left something behind, deep underground chambers, sealed off, not demolished, just buried. The park was built right on top. The water fountains, they're positioned exactly where the old facility's power grid used to be. I've been monitoring the temperatures around the park with thermal imaging equipment borrowed from a colleague. The readings don't make sense, cold spots that move, energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Yesterday, I saw something that made my blood freeze. A maintenance worker at the park wearing a badge I recognized, the same company logo from the old research facility. When our eyes met, he smiled. Not a normal smile, something in knowing. Wrong. He walked away before I could confront him. I've started documenting everything, recording all the evidence, sending copies to trusted friends. If something happens to me, someone needs to know. The death count is up to 15 dogs now, all following the same pattern, all within 24 hours of visiting the park. I'm going back tonight after closing. I know it's dangerous, but I have to find out what's in those underground chambers, what's causing this. I'm leaving this record just in case. If you're listening this and you have pets, stay away from new dog parks, check the history of the land. And most importantly, check the time. Always check the time, because somewhere out there, the countdown is still running, and we're all just waiting for our turn, 24 hours at a time this morning. I found something in my mailbox, an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single photograph, black and white, dated 1992. It shows the research facilities team standing in front of a massive machine. The device looks like nothing I've ever seen, all twisted metal and strange angles. But that's not what terrifies me. In the background, through a window, there's something moving, a shape that doesn't make sense. And standing in the front row, smiling that same wrong smile, is the maintenance worker. He hasn't aged, not a day. I've been getting calls too, just static when I answer. But if I play the recordings backward, there's a pattern, a pulsing.